All right. Hi, Kalyani.
Hello, Sabine.
How are you doing?
Pretty good.
You're good?
Good.
Yeah.
And yourself?
Good to see you. Yeah, pretty good. Yeah. Long day at work and a bit of a gym workout, and here we are, one without the other.
Well done.
Good to see you anyway. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. For you guys who don't know Kalyani and Pete, they're holding non-dual awakening meetings in basically, Australia. I met Kalyani a couple of years ago at Sarah Bob Adamson's, actually. She walked in and all of a sudden there was this presence, there was this silence that walked in. That's how I felt as a person at the time. You know, something hit me. You know, when you spoke, your voice was so, seemed so humble, so peace, so quiet. So, was it my imagination or? Yeah.
I don't know. It's your story.
It's my story. Thank you. Isn't it a beautiful story? I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Peter and you, yeah, basically you hold the meetings once a month, isn't it? At your place in Warrandyte. So what is it about? Yeah.
We have the meetings first Sunday of the month in Warrandyte and first Wednesday of the month in Collingwood.
Mm.
So it's a space that we offer. Usually there's a bit of an address, a talk at the beginning. Mostly it's Peter who does it. Sometimes I do.
Yeah.
And the opportunity that we offer is for people to ask whatever questions about what is seemingly getting in the way of what we might call that clear seeing. So the non-dual, of course, means not to. And we're in the habit of perceiving, of seeing, of experiencing, of relating to everything in a dualistic manner. That is imagining there's a separate me and there is the other, which is everything, every seeming thing that is apart from the notion of the me. And, you know, as things develop, we go from being quite young, this notion of the me develops all sorts of stories about it. Poor me, the this, the that, the what have you, the anxious me. And then we add more and more stuff to that. And, you know, we've got this great, huge bundle of stuff, concepts, and we identify with that and imagine that's who and what we are. So, what we say is that you are prior to all that conceptual material. The actuality of your being is prior to that. So the meetings are an opportunity for people to inquire deeply and to look at and begin to unravel and deconstruct the fantasy of the me notion. And, you know, what you're left with is what you always are. Non-dual, singular, prior to story.
So what you're saying is basically there's nothing to get, that you are basically already that. It's just that there are certain apparent concepts obscuring it, and this is what people can do with you. They can investigate, they can do investigation and see if there is anything here. Yeah. Is it like what you're trying to say is like that you don't need to do anything, or do you have to do something to become what you are? Or?
Well, nothing needs to be done to become what you are, because that's that.
That's that.
Nothing needs to be added or removed. But the habit is of placing the attention in the dialogue, in the storyline, in the thinking stream, in the narrative. And that's all that's ever happened. is we've identified with and imagined that that narrative that spontaneously arises is who and what we are, and we take ownership of it. And that notion, that me notion, that identity that we imagine we are, is yet another thought or constellation of thoughts in that thinking stream. So coming back, first of all, seeing that thinking stream, that there's a habit of placing the attention in that thinking stream, and then beginning to work quite vigorously. Now, there's nothing passive in this. This requires real effort to unpick the habits. So, sometimes people think this non-duality business is very passive, like, oh yeah, duh, sit back and it's all happening, man, and it all happens of its own. It does all happen as it does of its own. And in that, there's the effort, and it's not a me that's doing the effort. When effort is needed, effort arises.
Okay, so what would you suggest, like I hear people saying, and lots of us, that we get caught in the thoughts, and they keep repeating themselves seemingly, and there is a memory of some, not so great event in our life. We say it's a story, but seems very real at the time, or we project, like what's going to happen in tomorrow and all of that, and we end up, somehow mind drags us. So what do we do? Is it better to, do we go along with that, or is it better to stop?
Well, that's how most live. And when we're thrown around by that stuff, it can be a very painful existence. And when we're trying to suppress thoughts or ideas that we have that we would label as negative, requires huge amounts of energy. Whatever you push down just, pops up. It's like a balloon. You push it in one area, it's going to pop out somewhere else. So it's a never-ending job of trying to police the thinking stream and do stuff with it and push it down. And oddly enough, whatever we push away, whatever we put down in the basement, simply comes back to explode in our faces at some point. So suppressing and repressing, there's no benefit there. And letting it run riot is more of the same too. First of all, the critical thing is to notice the habits, and notice without judging, because we have the habit of judging. If we leave that judging mind aside, or learn to leave the judging mind aside, because everything's habit, the habits can be broken. Leaving the judgments aside. So a thought arises, normally we may judge it, then want to do something with it. See the judging is happening, be very gentle with it. So the thought of not being good enough, or not being this, or not being that, or whatever the content is, just see it. And loosen up that habit of the judging. Just loosen up the habit of the judging. And that gives you some real insight into the very automatic and spontaneous nature of the thinking. There is no thinker as such. This stuff is just spontaneously arising and spontaneously dissipating. And some of it is spontaneously hung on to. So seeing that and noticing that is the first step. And noticing and loosening the judgments. Then seeing that thinking stream, notice that that me notion is yet another thought in that thinking stream. And there's nothing wrong with the thinking. The problem becomes the me notion, or the reference point or ego, call it what you like, appropriates the contents of that and imagines it is doing the thinking. It takes ownership. It thinks it's running the show.
Yeah.
And, you know, just that quite logical thing that's often pointed out by teachers is, if that were the case, if you're running the thinking show, running the show, then why would you have up unhappy thoughts? It's as simple as that. The logic there doesn't hang clear.
So you suggest that we can't modify the thoughts. They're okay as they are, and just to look at that one which is apparently thinking. So there's nothing thinking here, is what you're saying, and the thoughts cannot be modified. They're just as they are.
Yeah, well, you can modify, but it's an endless task.
Mm.
Endless task, policing the mind and
Yeah.
trying to do stuff. And it's just absolutely exhausting to do that. I was just speaking with someone earlier
Yeah.
on a call, Skype call. You know, they'd almost got themselves to a point of exhaustion from trying to mentally do a whole lot of practices to contain the stuff. It's like, let go. Let go. And this thinking stuff, the so-called problem of the thinking, you know, it's not your thinking, it's not your thoughts. Just as it's said that it's like traffic. And if you treat that thinking stream like the traffic, don't take ownership. Just as it's not your traffic, it's not your thinking. Now, this is a key thing in all of this identity that we imagine we are, that takes ownership and appropriates the material that rises spontaneously of its own.
So it all arises spontaneously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty basic.
Yeah. So basically, it's what happens. Just leave it as it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just don't go there.
When we put a lot of energy into containing something or changing it or altering it, we're giving it oxygen. If there's a thought that's disturbing about ourselves, while the attention and the energy is being placed in that, it's being kept alive. So again, a thought arises. Maybe it's a sad thought, painful thought, whatever it might be. If it's something from the past, then nothing can be done to change context or the time or the memory, but that bringing it alive in the moment is the only reality it has. And alive in the moment, it's not the actuality of a particular event, it's a memory. Every time we remember something, and especially so if it's charged with some sort of feeling or emotion, the actual memory, the content of it is slightly altered. Memory is not consistent and it's not reliable. It's not like a video camera, taking it dispassionately and just being able to replay. So there's a whole fantasy thing that's going on. You know, we beat ourselves up with this stuff. Why?
Yeah, why? Good question. No one knows why, just no one knows, I presume, you know. It seems we've been given these concepts and we don't know any better, you know. I know myself, I was just going to the thoughts, and as you said before, I tried to watch them, and I there was someone here trying to watch them, and it was getting worse. And you said something nice last night, I've heard you, how you exhaust yourself. You said it just before as well, like trying, you exhaust yourself. And that's exactly what happened here. I was exhausted in the end, you know. So, yeah.
So all of this stuff is just fantasy. It's mind.
Yeah.
It's fantasy.
So
in a statement that the Buddha made, it's your mind that creates the world. You wake up in the morning, the wakefulness appears. The world as such appears.
Yeah.
There's that initial sense of wakefulness, and then we put that coat on again of identity. We re-inhabit all the stuff, and it's up and running again. You know, it's like leave it aside for as short space of time as a practice every morning, if you like. Just stay with that wakefulness. Stay with the wakefulness. Because everything else is just story.
So basically stay with the wakefulness, stay with what it is and what is, and just...
Yeah, well, you always, that's what always is. You always are staying with what is.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just the attention is going into the story-making machine.
Yeah.
So it's a bit like that image that I sometimes use of, you know, somebody's watching a beautiful film on TV, totally absorbed in it, you know, totally absorbed in it. And then along the bottom of the screen is the moving text. It's got the news report or the weather report or the stock exchange, you know, results scrolling across the bottom of the screen. And the attention goes into that. And you can't do two things at once. You cannot stay absorbed in the film and read the text at the same time. This is what we do. You know, the wakefulness that we are, this incredible spaciousness that is ever present. We miss it because we're busy reading the interpretive narrative that is constantly running, interpreting what it thinks is going on. And it's dragging stuff from the past, it's projecting to the future, it's remembering anxieties and what have you, and it's just this cacophony of stuff. And we miss the actuality.
That's beautiful. I like that. It's so true. Like we all live in the thoughts and are missing on you know, present moment. And people often ask how to stay in the present moment.
Can't get out of it.
How to get out of it.
No, you can't get out of it.
Good one, yeah.
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 It's just only getting caught up in the thinking stream. And even that's not a problem. The getting up and caught up in the thinking stream, the not caught up in the thinking stream, relaxing back into the spaciousness you've never been away from, focusing intently on something. It's all that play, expression of consciousness. And there's no problem.
Yeah.
The only problem that arises is that ownership and the resistance that comes in the pushing away of stuff that we seemingly don't want and the desperate hanging on to things that we imagine we want to keep.
Yeah.
Fixation.
Fixation, yeah. And you said something nice last night. I thought was really good about, just say if sensation arises, you know, you just don't label it. If emotion arises, pretty strong, uncomfortable emotion, you said drop the label of that. And what is that? Yeah.
If the label's dropped, there's just movements of energy, sensations. And without a label, then there's no judgment.
Yeah. So basically, whatever arises, it arises like naturally. So it's okay. There's nothing wrong, you know, with not being a robot, feeling the feelings. But do they become more subtle, or it is still, you know, when we do investigation and see, you know, what the thinker is and be with what is. Yeah, basically, does it become more subtle, do you think, or, you know, does it have the same sting as before, the thoughts, or does it become easier for people who are in, you know, in the thoughts, and, you know, sometimes it gets so seemingly so hard that depression arises, anxiety arises, you know.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff is just habit.
Mm.
And as these habits loosen,
Yeah.
in that seeing, in that clear seeing, yeah, these habits start to loosen.
Mm.
And if the thought arises, oh, I'm this, I'm that, or whatever it might be,
Yeah.
like, oh, there it arises again, like, so what?
Mm.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And if there's a sense of melancholy arising, it's a sense of melancholy. If there's a sense of joyfulness arising, it's a sense of joyfulness. Yeah, everything comes and goes. And again, if it's not labelled, if it's not pushed away or hung on to, it just moves. Just moves and flows.
Mm. It seems to me when you say it's a habit, you know, and it's kind of conditioned as a child, you know, from the parents. It's no one's fault. It's just how it is. We don't know any better. Through the schools and all of that, you know, we accumulate all of this, you know, seeming layers of, and we don't know who we are in the end, you know, because we form a certain imagination. I'm such and such, you know, I'm good at this, I'm good at, you know, writing, or, you know, whatever, talking or listening, you know, and that's what you basically identify yourself with. And your parents tell you you're stubborn, or, you know, you're good looking, you're bad looking, and you really take it seriously somehow, you know, and when the memory of that comes, it's sometimes if it's unpleasant, and it reinvents it somehow, and we don't know any better, it seems. Yeah, so it's almost like being hypnotized, like the way you say, you know, how you unlearn. It's as if we've been hypnotized. Now all of a sudden we have to unlearn all of that somehow.
Yeah,
And yeah,
it's just seeing it for what it is.
yeah,
Just seeing it for what it is.
mm.
And, you know, it's not about stopping the thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there can be very little thinking. Other times there can be lots of thoughts and chatter and, you know, stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
Focused attention, concerns. It's just what's arising, just in response to life. It's that the key to it is that ownership and that identification and imagining that the me is somehow real and somehow it is doing everything. It's this notion of the doer.
So the belief in the doer seems to be a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. You said a beautiful story once in your meeting. I think we recorded that one. You said a story about the horse and the man. That was so, like, you know, wow, it's like there was such an openness in that story. There was so, you know, just something in it. Would you remember that story too? Could you share it?
Sometimes in the last couple of years, the other day, I'm not telling that story again. That's it.
I seriously, I could listen to that, like, you could say to me every day.
The beauty of these ancient stories, the ancient wisdom that has been handed down over the ages. I mean, that story could be, I don't know, maybe it's a couple of thousand years old. It could easily be a couple of thousand years old or more. Yeah. The beauty of that story and what it points to is seeing that whatever is transpiring in the moment is simply happening in the moment. And to conclude or to assume that it's either good or bad is making a judgment in the moment without understanding totality. And that's what we do. That's our problem. Constantly going good, bad, good, bad, good, bad, good, bad. I don't want this, I want that, I want that.
Yes.
Drama. Somebody doesn't like me, somebody likes me. Da, da, da. The whole drama. It's just a mental construction. And the ownership is being taken by this other mental construction called the me notion. That's just another notion, it's another concept. It's all concepts. In fact, everything is conceptual. The singularity, the one that's often spoken about, is conceptual. It has no actuality.
Even singularity is a concept too, you're saying. Precisely. Even, wow.
Precisely.
Yes.
There is no one.
Okay. So somehow we have to use even the words to express this, and we are sharing here, like.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so you can basically resolve this in a way with the concept. You can strip it out with it. You can't. It seems such a paradox. Yeah.
And all of this is prior to mind.
Yeah.
They're useful. They're useful pointers.
Yes.
But this spaciousness that we speak about is prior to any concept, any way of describing it or quantifying. The first line, I think, in the Tao Te Ching is the name that can be named is not the eternal name. So anything that can be labelled is purely labelled. It's a concept. And, of course, there's nothing right or nothing wrong about a concept. It's perfectly fine, perfectly valid. Yet what we're speaking about is prior to any concept. Prior to mind.
So what's there prior to mind? Is there what's prior to mind? What do you call it? Again, you're trying to use a label.
Have a look.
Have a look.
The invitation.
Okay. Yeah.
The invitation is always to have a look. Yeah, to cut back, to rest back. Perhaps resting back in the noticing, not the noticing of any particular thing or the content of that noticing, but resting back in the space, the spaciousness of that noticing without content. And that starts to take you closer to that which you've never left. And, you can see the deliciousness of these words because there's no closer or further away. And yet, in this conversation, in this speaking about, in this pointing to, we employ these kinds of notions because that's their job. Pointer's job.
So basically there is nothing to do to get there, or like someone said the other day to me, like about, they asked about love and compassion, and they mentioned, they said something like, oh, where is your love and compassion? And I don't know, the response came like, I just can't force it, it seems, either it's there or it's not. So do we need love and compassion to see this, to see the actuality, or how do you see this, or practice of that?
Well, love and compassion is may spontaneously arise.
Mm. Mm. Because I've seen people actually talking about love and compassion non-stop, and they're doing stuff and all of that, but yeah, they like at the same time they seem very like so-called negative. I don't know how to, and
yeah, it's a nice idea. And often when it's spoken about, there's love and compassion, it's love, love,
yeah,
you also, you get the opposite. So if people are trying to love,
yeah,
you invariably get the opposite happening. Everything's in polarity. So you invariably get the opposite happening, which is not love.
Yeah.
And any trying to be, any trying to do, is trying to fulfill a notion or an idea and fulfill something. It's like, why? It's either spontaneously, love is either spontaneously arising, love for people or a person or a thing or some music, whatever it might be, or it's not.
Yeah.
And that actually has nothing to do with what we speak about as the non-dual.
So
it's often an assumption that, the non-dual, it's full of bliss and love and peace and Brahma, man, and it's all perfect. It's like, well, no. The non-dual is the non-dual. It has no content. It has no content. It's content-free.
Content-free.
It is purely the spaciousness, without division, without any sense of separation, without any particular quality. These qualities of love or not love or various other things are expressions, and they can be very beautiful expressions if you want to label them and quantify them. But that is something quite different than what we point to in non-duality.
Yes. So, but it's not a void, is it? Or is it only empty? Or is it? When you say it,
any labels are just labels.
Yes.
And falling back into that spaciousness that you've never been away from is just space. And if the mind and that attention is not going into the thinking, which is all, and the thinking quantifies and measures and gives qualities to it, the absence of that, there is only spaciousness. There is only thatness, which is the actuality. And everything else is the content that appears out of it.
When you say spaciousness and the space, it seems that seems the closest somehow.
Yeah, it's just a concept that this is a conversation. And that's how you have conversations.
Yeah. Otherwise, we can sit silent and look at each other. It's fine. No problem. So, can you leave that space? Can we?
How can you leave the spaciousness that you are? Where could you go? What is outside of that? Where is the else? Something else, somewhere else. Where is that? This totality.
So when this body goes, it goes into the space. Still, that stays in the space.
Well, nothing else but the spaciousness. Nothing goes anywhere.
Okay, good. Yeah.
And there's nothing to go anywhere.
Yeah.
The beautiful line from the Gita. Yeah. There was never a time you did not exist. There is never a future in which you will cease to be. This is, points to the birthless, deathless spaciousness that you always are. The finite notion of a beginning and an end is just a story. It's conceptual. It's mind stuff. Nothing wrong with it. Beautiful story. We wake up in the morning and the whole thing arises. The world arises. And it appears in a certain manner. It's all a construction. There is no colour in anything. Colour is in the brain. Everything is created. There's a deep mystery here. A deep mystery. And it requires an absolute dying to self. In a very real sense, this non-duality stuff, or whatever you want to call it, we can use different labels. It's not a pretty business, because a lot of it is just tidying up things, and that's fine, helping people, if they've got dramas of their headspace and whatever. But beautiful, it's fantastic. And yet, the real clear saying that is on offer and always on offer requires an absolute letting go. Any notions we have about ourself or separation is like abandoning them with no tomorrow. Just completely, utterly letting go. Free falling into the nothingness. And usually fear prevents that. Yes. There's the holding back. Free fall, trust, embrace, let go.
Yeah. It's just reminded me when you said free falling. When I did parachuting, like I jump off plane and all of that, and there is that moment of letting go where you when the door opens and there's nothing there's no other way out. you have to jump, and then you start falling, and then here you are, and there is a trust there, or a natural trust all of a sudden,
Yep.
And that fear often, it's so in a way, and we don't even see it, but as we are almost like holding imaginary branch that was never there, like trying to not, if I let go, I'm gonna die. But what is going to die? Yeah. That's
what dies is that false notion, the fantasy, the me fantasy.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems that lots of us look into this stuff after some suffering, like lots of suffering, and there is certain openness, I'd say. And people had accidents, and some have seen it just like watching the nature, I don't know, naturally. And but it seems most have looked into this stuff, and by really suffering, by life really pushing them to that openness. What I'm trying to say here also is, like, I know you've seen a few great teachers like Yuji Krishnamurti, you've seen Ramesh, you've seen Muktananda and Sailor Bob and all these great beings. So did that search help, or was there at some point where you stopped searching? Did one of these teachers, teach you? Did they tell you how to, to stop, or did it help in a way?
You can't say it helped. You can't say it didn't help. I mean, that is what happened.
Yeah.
And each of these looked at him as an extraordinary being to be around.
Yeah.
And we were around him before he got hugely famous, and the unravelling happened at the very last part of his life, which was very unfortunate.
Yeah.
Extraordinary stuff, just being around.
Yeah.
Sometimes 2 or 3 people sitting around with him. Extraordinary.
Yeah.
And Yuji Krishnamurti. Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing man. Just pretty little, small little guy.
Yeah.
Small little guy. And, you know, it became quite clear just prior to meeting Yuji that there's nothing it could do. That I hadn't created this particular construction, the Kalyani construction.
Yeah.
Spontaneously, birth happened, etc., etc. I wasn't responsible. I couldn't muck around and alter the DNA to make it more to my liking or whatever. And there was nothing I could do to further understanding or actually to pull away from understanding. And there was an extraordinary confirmation that took place hanging around with Yuji. It was only a couple of days we spent with him in Melbourne.
Yes.
And, you know, it was clear there was nothing further to do.
Yeah.
That was 1991.
Yeah.
And so sometimes, you know, that whole spaciousness would just break through. I'd be walking out in the back and ruminating about some issue, consciousness and what have you. And we have so many birds, beautiful birds here. And birds are my great teachers. I learned so much from birds.
Yeah.
And a bird would fly through, it would just collide with the thinking.
Yeah.
And then there would just be an absolute stopping of the thinking. It would just literally stop. And there'd just be a falling into that spaciousness, that non-dual space. So this was a random occurrence. And then, you know, there'd be a coming back into the sense of identity, the me, which is also always such a painful re-entry as such. And so it was 2006 that we reconnected with Bob, of course. It's just a critical little thing that he pointed out around the ownership, the me notion stuff. And I just worked like crazy, listening to every word, doing absolutely everything. And I'd read right through late at night. I'd be reading I'd be reading, doing everything, just like wham, wham, wham. Just pushing it. And it requires, as Mr. Gadada said, it requires absolute effort. Absolute effort. You've got to push past those range of resistances that we would more normally experience. Push past the comfort zone. Be willing to let go of everything. Absolutely willing to let go of absolutely everything. Every thought, every concept. And, you know, in that letting go, the constructed reality as such, or the construction of the world that we've imagined, we've inhabited, starts to get very wobbly, starts to get really fuzzy. And it's then seen that it is a construction, it's put together, it's conceptual, it's all conceptual. You start fiddling around with one bit, and the game's up completely, utterly. One little bit, and it falls over.
So there was some due diligence there, which it was like, did you feel that you had to put effort in that? Or did it push you? Did something push you to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You put effort in, just like you put effort in to do anything.
Yeah.
You know, it's this there can be a misunderstanding. Oh, there's no me to do any effort, so therefore I don't do anything. And there's floating along a kind of arrogance. It's kind of an arrogance that can happen.
Yes.
And it's like, things require real effort.
Yes.
Real effort.
Yes.
The critical thing is the fantasy that there's a me that's separate that is actually doing it. And that's the key in all of this. If you want to paint your house or do something, that's hard work.
Yes.
That requires real effort.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, this fantasy that it's just, you just sort of sit around and, everything just happens of its own. Yeah, everything is happening of its own. Everything spontaneously arises.
Yes.
Including the effort, the diligence, the focus, the intention. And this stuff is, I often say, it's a bit like when an animal smells water. Like a herd of cattle. When they take them on a drive, they're moving them from one part of a property to further down on the old runs that they used to do, stock runs. And then at some point, the cattle would smell water. And when you've got animals, herds of animals, whether cattle or whatever else, and it smells water, it's smelling home. And there's nothing can stop them. They will just go.
That is beautiful, yeah.
So it's a similar thing.
Yes.
When this essence that you truly are, tastes, there's a taste, it begins to coo to itself. It calls to itself. It sings to itself. It summons itself. It starts to reel itself in like on a fishing line.
Yeah.
And there's no stopping it. The me that we may fantasize that we are couldn't stop it if we tried.
Yes.
It has a life of its own.
I'm so glad you shared this because it's I believe it's going to be helpful for lots of people because sometimes people don't know. Sometimes they hear there's no one to do this, or they hear all sorts of things like, as you said, but it seemed effort here at the time, like it was just like unstoppable effort.
Yeah.
It just couldn't, everything would be forgotten, but it seemed there was some effort there, like, and it was like, like more than anything, like that, it was very powerful, and and I'm really glad you mentioned that cattle and when they smell the water, it is it's a great analogy.
If you take a bowling ball,
you
take it to the top of a hill,
and
you just leave it there you just leave it on the side of the hill. Just simply remove your hands. That ball will roll to the bottom of the hill. It's not doing it.
Yes. And when you said something walking along that cliff, that's falling off.
There's a lot of in contemporary non-duality. There's a lot of the neo-Advaita sort of story stuff, and I'm sure I'm guilty of some of it. Fine. But there's a lot of very passive sort of stuff. It's taking a stance of being very passive. So it's almost like taking an anti-doing stance. So
like almost deliberate anti-doing, almost deliberate, almost.
Yeah, exactly. So imagining that there's no doer, imagining that there's nothing to do and nowhere to go and nothing to get, which is true in one sense. There's a passive kind of stance taken, well, like, do me then, life, if this is meant to be, then blah, blah, blah. So again, that's taking another stance, and taking a stance is more of the stuff of holding a position. And it's like letting go of the beliefs, letting go of the imagined thoughts, and anything that's prescriptive is critical in all of this. When we have prescriptive thoughts about how something should be and how we should arrive at that, or whatever it might be, then we're creating a story projecting to the future where there's a future state imagined. And if we've got the thinking that's happening projecting to future, that's duality. There's a mind being held, being caught in that polarity, in that two. The now, which is not now, or not here, and the future, which will be the now, here, then. You know, it starts getting all very mentally gobbledygook.
Yes. It seems we go wrong way, wrong direction.
Yeah.
Thoughts and who is right?
Stuff.
What is wrong. Yeah.
More stuff. More
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Would you say we all have that intuitive, like intuition, and we all have that natural, whatever, innate quality to recognize what resonates with us, rather than, can't we recognize when we go headway? And I've heard Peter saying, mentioning unborn Buddha mind. It seems to me solution there. And then even to say that, some say, you know, you can't be, like, there's no such a thing, because that's the concept. Yeah, but everything is a concept. But it's kind of, it seems really, there is some ease, feeling of ease when you say unborn mind. It's like relief, hearing it. Some natural relief, you know. And yeah, you say be kind to yourself. You said, I've heard you saying be kind.
Yeah.
To yourself. Yeah.
Show a bit of kindness, a bit of compassion.
Yes. Yes.
You know? Because, you know, one of the beautiful things that Muktanand used to say was, you know, honour yourself, worship yourself, bow down to yourself, because you are that. You are that, expressed in that particularized form. We don't have to go looking for anything. There's no out there or in here. The thatness is what you are.
So when you say, you know, there is uniqueness, everyone is so unique, although there is one. And then also, as if that preference happens somehow, seems to be preference still. When people say, you know, sometimes also there's confusion that, oh, you know, you got to love everyone and everything, you know. I don't know, how would you say that? Do you have to really love everyone and love everything, or how does it work? Like,
but you see that the issue there is the prescriptive stuff of having an idea about how something should be. It's more of the same. It should be like this. The behaviour should be like this. It shouldn't be like another way. And with preferences, I think often there can be a confusion between what we might talk about as absolute and relative stuff.
Yeah.
So in the content or the relative material that's arising, let's put it in those terms, of course there's preferences. People eat certain sorts of foods and not other sorts of foods. You know?
Yes.
It's pretty normal.
Yeah.
Normal stuff. There's no issue. When we're speaking about, you know, let's call it simply consciousness. And we're looking to get past being caught up in that conceptual me stuff, then dropping that notion of preferences, you've really got to start seeing the judgments that spontaneously arise and just loosening up with that. So
Loosening up.
When there's a mixing of metaphors as such,
Yeah.
when there's a sense of sameness taken into the seeming relative, there can be problems. For example, it's very good to stop at a red traffic light.
Yeah.
This is called common sense.
I like that common sense. Stop at red traffic lights, it's good.
And also, getting back to part of your question earlier about intuition, it's like that spontaneous knowing is always present in everyone. There's a deep knowing that has never left. And the only thing we could say, if you want to say it, is that the attention is going into the conceptual story and being caught up there. So nothing, in that sense, nothing needs to be attained because that is the natural state. That's a spaciousness that we've never left. So in a sense, you might say it's a coming home. Without the coming or without the going, it's the coming home, the being with what we've never been away from.
That's a relief. Not necessary to buy a airfare to, travel to find it somewhere. It's such a paradox. It seems so, like, we keep seeking and seeking, seemingly just takes us away from that. Such a trick, isn't it? Sitting on a treasure, a treasure map or something.
Never mind the sitting, you are the treasure.
You are the treasure, yes. Okay, Kalyani. It's been, thank you for, it's probably good to probably come to the end. It's already getting late in Australia. And thank you so much for sharing this. This is really feeling like you just leave one without anything. Thank you for nothing. And now just a reminder again that you hold meetings, and it's every first Sunday from 3 o'clock. Is it from 3 to 4:30? And every first Wednesday in Collingwood, in Johnston Street. It's quite easy to get there. There's a public transport, there is a bus right at the front. Or it's nearby, easy to drive, easy to park. And there is a website, Non-Duality Australia.
The website is nonduality.com.au.
Yes.
And the Facebook is, as you said, Non-Duality
Australia. So you can be checked out, you can be contacted, and you holding resorts. People can stay at your beautiful house in the nature in Warrandyte, which is really like, I've seen all these cockatoos, there are kangaroos, and it's stunning. It's just city fringe, but it's great nature. There is a little pond there, like a river behind your house. So
down the bush.
The
river that goes down through into Melbourne is down the back there.
Yes.
So you can bring your bathers and go for a swim.
Here you go. You should do that sometimes. You should have told me that before. I can swim to your place probably on Sunday.
Well, absolutely.
I'll just go Yarra River. No, we wouldn't swim there, depending which way. Okay, thank you so much, and yeah, I really appreciate this. And, yeah,
it's lovely having a conversation with you.
Yes, I really
seeing a beautiful face on my screen here. It looks terrific.
One without the other. Okay,
Indeed.
Thank you so much. Have a good night, and yeah, can't wait to see you on Sunday. Okay, thank you.
Lovely. Look forward to it.